Come, let us recite from the Great Garuda in flight, and then savor effortless meditation. Together, so if you are following along with me on the Tube app, you can actually see my screen and read with me, if you so desire. This pure essence of the non-discursive state is not hidden in one's personal experience. All those who live without the tyranny of grasping, in accord with perfect purity, always dwell in intrinsic reality. Excuse me. The mayor of Mucusville at your service. So, the non-discursive state is deeply misunderstood. From a literalist, rigid point of view, it means not thinking. But that's not sustainable. So let's look at it from a figurative point of view. And what that means is we need neither lofty faith, I'll take that back, we need neither blind faith nor a lofty philosophizing to passively cooperate with our own autonomic nervous system in a way that makes us as peaceful and as loving as we would like to be. So that's quite a claim, but that's so much hot air. There's two ways I can prove it to you. A, through neuroscience, and B, by you actually practicing with me in silent meditation for the remainder of this morning's live stream. So let's do both. To remind you about how the neuroscience works, I'm going to quickly push a couple buttons here and do my best to navigate over to a set of visual aids. Both the visual aids and this teaching text are available for free download as PDFs. Everything I do is free. I'm not smart enough to have an agenda. So, the first thing is said is a literal view of non-discursive thought. Non-discursive thought doesn't work. Why? Why doesn't it work? Well, we are wired. Let's phrase it this way. The only part of our brain capable of active focus and active analysis are the dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortex, in addition to being a winning answer in Scrabble. Like any tool, it can be used or abused. When we overuse it, and we wind up abusing the front of our brain, that does not occur in a vacuum. There are consequences, not spooky consequences, but just practical consequences. You know, like stretching in the cold without warming up has consequences. No supernatural element. Overworking our prefrontal cortex induces us to present with various symptoms of depression, no less triggers our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. That's what happens when we try to control what our brain does. Whether we say our brain's going to focus on one thing or no thing, whether we try to force our mental experience to be likened to that of a lonely cricket in an empty field, that might sound really cool to our inner 12-year-old who's just 12-year-old who's trying to be Bob bitchin', I'm not going to think at all. Yeah, that's not going to work. It's going to do more harm than good. The part of us that's rigid and literal forgets that we are wired by evolution to think symbolically. It is therefore not surprising that in every human culture we find figures of speech. It's just how we are wired. So when we look at non-discursive thought or freedom from discursive thought, figuratively, it means we don't have to philosophize. We don't have to exhaust ourselves with dreaming up elaborate stories, pseudo-intellectual stories, to explain why we can meditate. We also don't need blind faith, because that is just another form of rigidity. So we've talked about the baddies. We talked about abusing the prefrontal cortex and abusing the amygdala. By the way, amygdala is a great tool if you're in a zombie apocalypse and you're trying to defend yourself. That's great. The amygdala is your friend. It's kind of like, if you're as geeky as me and you remember Deep Space Nine, Garrick, plain and simple, had a device installed in his head, which was supposed to be used intermittently when being tortured, and he just kept it on all the time until he developed a full-blown addiction. For the 99% of you who aren't sci-fi Star Trek geeks, there's a difference between having a sip of ceremonial wine once every 2 years and, forever having a wine glass in your hand. But fortunately, neither the amygdala nor the prefrontal cortex constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. The reason we don't need philosophy or blind faith to meditate is that we are already wired to practice that. Consider, if you will, the simple spinal cord. Every time we inhale, every time we feel our chest swell with breath, we are wired to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, known by some as the sympathetic nervous system. It has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to help us to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, to help us notice mind's antics of seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like, including the full spectrum of human emotions, intentions, cognition, recollection, and imagination. So instead of rigidly picking and choosing, pushing and pulling, we're just practicing the non-dual vulnerability, being completely vulnerable to whatever comes up, be it external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. But what do we do with that which we notice? Well, every time we exhale, every time we feel our lungs sort of sink in upon themselves, even just subtly, we're wired to automatically access the end bits, the bottom bit and the top bit of that same spinal cord, known as the parasympathetic nervous system. That has evolved to help us to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation, could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and even less defining. And yes, we talked about figures of speech, and here's a fun one. Let's get some momentum. Relax. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Only with something with this many as's could be a simile. A simile is only as useful as it is relatable, so we have to ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn? which although could look tantalizing to the eye, feels non-graspable to the hand. So I've done a lot of blathering, haven't I? One of my teachers insisted it's always good to have a hook upon which to hang your hat. Let's do that right now. Oh, I forgot something. Here we go. Every moment we are faced with a choice. Do we actively compete against our own autonomic nervous system? Or do we passively cooperate with it? That's a tall order for those of us who are conditioned by society to be rigid and controlling. How do we do that? Easy. Every time we feel our lungs swell with breath, we silently and mentally recite the verb watch. Every time we feel our lungs sink with exhalation, silently and mentally we recite the verb rest. And we just watch and rest our way through our period of meditation, whether it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes. Do this every 12 hours or so, and you will notice things. You will notice your amygdala calming down. You will notice enhanced peace. You will notice that involuntarily, you'll experience an involuntary stimulation of your anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of your mirror neurons, the seat of empathy. Perhaps that is why the late Tulku Thondup insisted that the highest love was the spontaneous and uncontrived byproduct of mindfulness, meditation, of watching and resting. An additional byproduct is that our choices, utterances, and deeds begin to flow not from calculated contrivance, not from wild scatteredness, but from a centered spontaneity. You could call this a flow state or effortless effort or wu wei. It's pretty cool. So the great irony is that, number one, enlightenment is just mastery of the Eightfold Path. And number two, the dynamo of the Eightfold Path is just watching and resting that cause the remaining sixfolds to occur spontaneously. And as a lazy bastard, that's just the way I like it. So having marinated in neuroscience and silliness, let's return to this morning's teaching text. Got to push the right button. Okay, I think it's going to be 7. One of the delightful challenges of some forms of ADHD is we have a memory that keeps resetting. So that makes finding the right buttons on my own OBS to be a bit of an exciting thing. So let's return to the text, and I'm going to push an additional button so I can touch it with my cursor, which sounds filthy, but it's not. Or to quote my favorite mortician, which sounds salacious, but it's not. So this pure essence of the non-discursive state is not hidden in one's personal experience. So another feature of the non-discursive state is we don't need to narrate. We don't need to label obsessively, fastidiously obsessively. All right, now I'm feeling this emotion or this sensation or that memory. It's just watch and rest. That's it. That's a response to whatever we experience. Is not hidden in one's personal experience. We don't have to navel gaze. We don't have to ask ourselves stupid questions like, what was my name before I was born? What was my first thought? What was my thought before my first thought? Blah, 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 blah. So have you noticed that some novels are written in a distinctly neurotic voice? Some people have equated relentless self-questioning to be with spirituality. What do I feel? Well, why do I feel that? Well, why do I feel that? What does that say about me? Oh my goodness, that's not helpful. Just watch and rest. The three-ring circus, that is our mental experience. Be it glorious or grotesque, interesting or boring. All those who live without the tyranny of grasping, in accord with perfect purity, always dwell in intrinsic reality. So perfect purity here refers to us cooperating with our parasympathetic nervous system as we relax into our exhalation. That's it. So intrinsic reality. Conventionally, that means not being positive, not trying to protect ourselves with cynicism, just being vulnerable to the present moment, being vulnerable to all the sights and sounds and sensations and flavors and scents and emotions and tension and intentions and thoughts and memories and imaginings that bounce around our cranium like the 4th of July fireworks display. We have an image here of an individual known as the All Good Ones in Tantric Union. And back in the 90s, I was first introduced to I think it was in the TV show Spin City. I was first introduced to the phrase, "Oh, Mom, it's all good, Mama." Or it's all good, baby. So this person's name is the All Good One. And that has become a metaphor for saying that there's no such thing as a bad perception. There might be a scary perception. There may be a painful perception. There might be an inconvenient perception. Like when you're dating someone and all of a sudden they start spouting red flags, which is really inconvenient because they're pretty, they're warm for your form, and you've been fantasizing about moving in together. Perceiving the red flags is terribly inconvenient, but very useful, is it not? So, intrinsic reality means, well, all good means we don't have to protect ourselves from perception. We perceive and we process by watching and resting in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. So, in our inhalation, we experience reality as it is. And as we exhale and relax, it's purified. That is not magic. It doesn't mean the world goes away. If I notice President Tangerine, if I notice during my inhalation, I notice Kinkles McTaco Tits. And I relax during my exhalation, I assure you he does not go away. That motherfucker's still there. In all his coke-induced incontinental glory. But I am less enslaved by terror or bloodlust. I'm more able to think and find empathy for all his victims. Those who are obviously his victims, those who are his victims but don't know it. And evil, even empathy for that son of a bitch. And yet, so he doesn't go away as I relax, but I've experienced greater empathy and visions of mutual aid and cooperation and organizing dance in my head, not because I'm so damn clever, but because when we watch and rest, we allow our brain to use all its components in the most sustainable way, including the components at the front of the skull, including our dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortex. I don't know how to conjugate the noun cortex. Is it cortices? Who knows? Anyway, the key that unlocks the vault of our profound intellectual and creative and intuitive capabilities is the easy, simple act of cooperating with our own autonomic nervous system as we watch and rest. Having completed our opening lesson, let us now shift gears. It is Luke Skywalker Friday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. After about 30 seconds of housekeeping, this is the Dzogchen Semdai Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to Nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to meditate like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. For the remainder of this morning's live stream, together let us sit and breathe and watch and rest. And don't worry, you're not in this alone. The moment you got a question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. But I gotta warn you, there's a side effect. You will compulsively start giving a flying fuck about others. I think Buddha said that. Yes, so when you type your questions, I check for them intermittently. If I don't respond to your question immediately, please don't take it personal. I've got a 3-ring circus of disabilities that I am juggling. The statement that was inferred in the opening text, I'm not sure I hammered it home, so I'd like to do that right now. Hammer it home. What a terrible turn of phrase. I'd like to hammer it home, said the Roman soldier to the Jew on the cross. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever desire we noticed during our previous inhalation has less and less control over our choices and utterances and deeds. And so the liberation the Buddha offers us is not liberation from the presence of dread or desire, but from their tyranny. Any idiot can be happy when everything is just so. What separates the adults from the kids is the ability to find peace in the midst of garbage. Once again, that's not a call to complacency. It's a call to move forward from the heightened efficiency of centered spontaneity, so that our activism and organizing doesn't become just a mere political theater, but actually transformative on an individual and systemic level. Now, if I was really articulate, I would have said on levels both individual and systemic. That's why we have backspace buttons on our keyboards. So it's difficult because we look around us and we see an ocean of unmet needs, circumstantial and physical and interpersonal and mental. We see American Gestapo. We see white supremacy, which is definitely an oxymoron, on the rise. We see racism and sexism and classism. and jingoism and fascism. And on one hand, we want to fix it. On the other hand, we don't want to be driven mad by our lofty desires. We don't want to have a psychotic break. We don't want to have a stroke because of frustration and rage and raging against the machine. And so we try to find a way, a common ground, so we can have the right intentions and take the right actions in the most sustainable and effective way. And I'm reminded of, I will paraphrase a line from the first season of Andor. I am planting fruit trees whose shade I will never enjoy. I don't want that. I want therapeutic, long-lasting, effective change yesterday. But that's a distinct possibility. And we have to move our goals from just ourselves to all beings everywhere. And not just now, but in perpetuity. Now, I'm not saying to do nothing, but I'm saying for the sake of our peace, we need both poetry and prose. We need both idealism and pragmatism. We need both individualism and cooperation and collectivism. We know that sometimes we'll be the leading character, sometimes we'll be the supporting character, sometimes we'll just be the background character. Our role, like everything else in life, is fluid and flexible. And we cannot should our way into mental health. That doesn't work. I know. I've tried. But we can flow and dance our way to be healthy, wise, loving, peaceful, well-adjusted, and effective revolutionaries. In a world that treats other humans as disposable, I don't want to conform. In the world that seeks to commodify and to capitalize everything, I don't want to conform. In the world that says there are no human rights, humans don't even deserve clean air or water, I don't want to conform. In the world that says one gender is better than another, or one sexual identity is better than another, or one sexual state or gender state is better than another, or one shade of one's skin is better than another, or one ethnicity is better than another, I don't want to conform. And I don't think you do either. You can forget the immortal words of Rage Against the Machine, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. They sang that on British TV and promptly were taken off the air. Let us find ways to be authentic and effective and sustainable as we lovingly try to do the right thing for all beings. I'm reminded of the wonderful lyric by David Bowie. And these children that you spit on as they try to change the world are well aware of what they're going through. I hold a special corner of shame in my heart for the white America's response to the murders of unarmed protesters at Kent State when I was just a toddler. They said they had it coming. Not everyone is insightful. Not everyone is loving. But we can help those who have enough intelligence and enough love. We can help them to also take sustainable and effective action. It is easy to look at scandals and point and scoff. But if we do a fearless, ruthless self-examination, we can see that each of us has had moments where we were scary or annoying or pathetic. Most of us have not stepped in it to a spectacular degree, but that's probably more luck than anything else. Empathy does not mean forsaking a desire to do the right thing. It means knowing that we all have the same emotional vocabulary. We are all capable of glories and grotesqueries. Not to justify or minimize cruelty or folly, to help us love ourselves and others despite our many shortcomings. I really enjoyed the movie by Michael Moore, Where to Invade Next. It talks about recidivism and how the question of whether or not a convicted sex offender will repeat depends largely on how they're incarcerated. If they're incarcerated in a distinctly punitive manner, it'll probably excite their cruelty and violence, whether they wanted to or not. That's just the neuroscience. When people are treated as if their crimes against humanity were symptoms of a disease, and the disease model is used, there's more successful rehabilitation. According to the statistics, I have endured multiple sexual assaults, first beginning in childhood. It is horrific. It is monstrous. But if we treat a monster monstrously, we'll wind up with a bigger monster. We treat people kindly, not because they deserve it, but because humanity requires it. Some of the greatest physicists and neurologists or neuroscientists agree that there is no free will. There's a long chain of non-spooky causality. Anthropological studies have shown that chimpanzees and bonobos are genetically very similar, but behaviorally very different. Violent chimpanzees live with greater scarcity. Groovy bonobos live with both safety and plenty. If we do not treat crime as a symptom of a disease, both individual and sociological and systemic, it will persist. Patriarchy loves to punish. Matriarchy yearns to heal. Let us choose spiritual matriarchy. Whether or not there is one God, multiple gods, or no gods, whether gods are real or allegorical, I'm reminded of a wonderful line by Jethro Tull. He who made kittens put snakes in the grass. Life is a mixed assortment. The more we are able to flow from centered spontaneity, the more skillfully we can respond to whatever is thrown at us or to us. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 2.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's brunch meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.